aquí no tenía así. Esto te puede, ¿cómo se dice?
Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. I've got the latest from Ruger in their security series. It's the Security 380. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Kahr belts, linked to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. This is also the latest in what they're calling their Lite Rack series, which has a very, very easy to rack, very light slide. And this is heavily based on their 9mm version, even to the point that the magazines, I believe, are 9mm magazines with this blocker in them to account for the shorter shell. And the slide and all the other internals of the gun appear to be basically the 9mm, except of course you have to make the slide lighter, the round's less powerful. So they did that in a stylish manner. They kind of cut this groove in, and then these ports, the barrel is not ported, the slide is ported, but I believe what this is all related to lightening the slide as far as the physical weight of it to allow the less powerful round to function. But they did it in a nice stylish manner. It actually creates a very nice looking gun. And when you look at the aesthetics of the gun in general, with or without the magazine, it's a nice looking gun. It's got a nice texture to the grip. It's easy to keep in your hand. And it comes with two magazines. It comes with a 15-round magazine, and it comes with the 10-round magazine that's installed in it. And it also comes with a flush base plate. So you can remove this pinky extender base plate and put this flush base plate on if you don't want the pinky extender. Without the, if I take the magazine out and simulate the flush, I would get basically a two-finger grip on it. Pinky be hanging. And if I put either the extended mag or the pinky extender, I get a full three-finger grip. And it's comfortable to hold. Now, one thing I did find with this is the recoil on this is negligible. It's a very comfortable recoil. They also have done a very good job with the trigger. So it's got the inertial toggle on the trigger. Decent amount of take-up. It's not excessive, but it's really smooth. And a very defined, crisp wall, but it's a light wall, so you can pull through it very easy. And the reset is very noticeable. You can kind of get a click and you can kind of feel it, but it's almost all the way out. So I'll cycle it again and go back onto the reset. But when you finish that reset, there's a hair of take-up to get back on the wall. And then again, that relatively short, light, but very defined, crisp break. I found it overall to be a nice trigger. This is an internal hammer-fired gun, and of course you'll see that when I take the slide off. But it does have a number of safeties. Ruger, of course, is known for their safeties. It has the inertial toggle on the trigger. It also has a hammer catch, which would serve a similar function to the drop safety piston that you find on striker guns. And it has a very heavy spring on the firing pin, because there's a transfer pin between the hammer and the primer that will prevent even a drop from moving that firing pin and doing it on its own. And of course it has the thumb safety. The safety only works easily when it's in a cocked position. You have to operate it from the back. If you kind of catch it from the front up here, it's very difficult to do. So it looks like you can grab it from anywhere, but you really need to put the bulk of the force here. It's very defined and very easy to click on, off, because you can bring your thumb down on it and sweep it off. But it's a lot more difficult to thumb on, because when you bring your thumb up, unless you've got a short thumb, you're tending to put the force up at that front end of it. So what I found is it's easy to thumb off, which of course would be the important thing, kind of go mode, and I need to get the safety off. That works very, very easily, but it's somewhat cumbersome to put on. I would have kind of liked if they'd kind of adjusted that, maybe had it come back this way so that you could put the force on it in the correct direction from your thumb. But it does work. The safety does work reliably. The sights on it are not my favorite. So it has a fiber optic front sight, which is actually quite nice, quite easy to see. It does have a blackout rear sight, which I'm not a fan of blackout sights, and that showed in my shooting footage. I was able to pull tight groups out with it, but I had to work for it. What I ended up having to do is kind of locate the gaps and kind of center it up, as opposed to having three dots that I can just align. That's all personal preference. It is a steel rear sight, so it's a good quality sight, and the sights are adjustable and replaceable so that you can drift them out and replace them if you choose to. Overall, it did seem to be well made. The quality seemed to be good on it. There's a couple things. One, there was a question in the comments, so what's with the rubber band? Basically, this is just for marketing. You put a yellow rubber band on a black gun, and this sits in a rack, which is basically a sea of black polymer pistols, Glocks, and all the others. It stands out, it catches your attention. That's the only purpose it really is when it's sitting in a gun case, it kind of draws your eye to it, makes you kind of come over and take a look at it. And once you come over and take a look at it, it's a nice looking gun. It's going to kind of incline you to pick it up. So from a marketing perspective, I imagine that's really what that's all about. It doesn't really serve any other function other than that. The other question I'll get to a little bit later in the video when I do some quick side-by-sides with this and some other guns. I found it easy to shoot well, and it did function reliably. It has a very narrow feed ramp, but it's polished. But we tried this with several different types of ammo, because 380 sometimes, if they got a narrow feed ramp, can be temperamental. We tried it with some Hornady Critical Duty, which is very pointy. We tried it with some Hydroshock, which is kind of a truncated cone. We tried it with some Blazer, which is a bit on the roundish side. And we tried it on some Winchester, which is on the flatter side. All of them worked. This gun, from round 1 to the last round, worked reliably. One other thing that had come up that I saw in a video is somebody dropped their loaded magazine on the concrete floor, and I think it was this magazine, and the magazine exploded. But they were doing kind of the whole tactical, hold the gun up in the air, hit the release button, let the magazine drop on the floor, on a concrete floor. We dropped it unintentionally from about waist height onto a thin carpet padding that would be on your typical range. It was not part of an intentional test, and it wasn't directed straight down. It kind of fell out of the hand, and they held together. So I think if you do make a mistake and you drop one in an unintentional way, they're probably going to be fine. But if you're doing that tactical thing, dropping them straight down, and they hit on this, all the force is centered, they may crack. But we had no problems with the magazines on these. First round to last round, there was no break-in period. The thing just worked. So let's talk about the dimensions before I take it apart. It's 6.52 inches front to back. It's 4.35 top to bottom. And it's 1.02 inches thick. It kind of looks thicker than it is because it's kind of got a squarish back end, but this is thinner than a lot of them that are out there. Not as thin as some of the little tiny things like the LCP. And it weighs 19.7 ounces, so it's relatively light. And of course 380, the ammo is lighter, so even fully loaded, this is going to be lighter than a 9mm. It's a hardened steel slide, steel barrel, black oxide coating. And when I take it apart, one thing I notice is that the rails appear to be aluminum, which is fine because as long as you keep it lubricated, they're going to work well. But that was a little bit surprising, but that would also probably account for a little bit of the weight being taken off. Maintaining this is fairly easy. You pull the slide back, of course you have to take the safety off. Pull the slide back until this pin is lined up in the cutout, and then you kind of reach over the top of the pin and pull it forward like that. And I did it with a fingernail. And if I keep the slide lined up, it comes right out. It can be done with a tool, but a tool is not required. And of course, those that watch the channel regularly know how much I like when you have to use a tool. Because if I can do it with either a cleaning tool or I could do it with my thumb, that's not really using an external tool, then the takedown in my mind is fine. And notice it came right apart. These rails appear to be aluminum. They're not steel, but they're also not polymer. But they're a full-size long rail, so as long as you keep it lubricated, there should be no problem. They should hold up well. You can see the hammer back here. It's well protected inside the rails. And you can't really see the sear mechanism and the hammer catch. They're buried in there. Without taking it apart, it would be difficult to see that. On the slide is clean and well machined. Ruger generally does good, well constructed machining. Captive guide rod. Here's the barrel. Of course, it's got their typical Canon profile, which in theory gives you a little bit tighter lockup and a little bit better repeatability and accuracy. The barrel is conventional rifling. It's well machined. I wouldn't say it's spectacular, but it is well machined. And you can see the highly polished feed ramp. If I can get it to focus. Highly polished feed ramp. You see how it is kind of narrow at the bottom and then kind of flares up. Sometimes that can be a recipe for trouble. In this particular gun, it proved not to be. It just worked. Reassembly is pretty much as easy as disassembly. Slide the barrel in. Slide the recoil spring in. Like any others, make sure that it's reasonably centered, and then you just slide it back on, and you slide it back and hold it till that lines up. Take the pin with the catch part facing up, slide it in, make sure it goes all the way in, and the only reason it didn't is because while I was putting it in for the camera, I turned my hand a little bit and the slide kind of moved. But it's really easy to do, and of course when you're doing it facing you rather than turned for the camera, it's much even easier to do. But I find this actually really goes well. The catch is kind of set up correctly so that it would be difficult to put it in upside down, and it's kind of got a rounded edge on the top, so it shouldn't catch on anything even if it were to get brushed against something. So overall I would say it's a well done design. If you're looking for a Lite Rack, which that's the key to this, it's bigger than some 380s, but it's actually smaller than many in that Lite Rack territory, that you can actually easily do the slide. I'm doing it with 2 fingers, and no, you wouldn't do that in practice with 2 fingers, but like when I kind of showed the first look on this, I've got really strong hands, so if I grab them like this, you couldn't tell the difference between a Lite Rack and a heavy regular slide or even a Desert Eagle. So that's why I do this. I do this to deliberately weaken my grip so that it's kind of clear what it takes to cycle the slide, and you can see very easy to cycle. If you've got hands that are strong enough to hold the gun, to keep it on target, then your hands are strong enough to cycle it. And that's really kind of important because that's an area that's been, up until very recently, kind of ignored by the gun community as a whole. I'm just going to do some quick side-by-sides. We are going to do some comparisons, some actual comparisons with this with some other guns. But the first one I'll do is with this little Ruger. So this is the LCP Max. And you'll see this is significantly smaller. But there's a few things. It's got actually similar capacity, but the slide's a little heavier. You know, when I try to do the 2-finger, I can kind of barely do it. If I bring a second finger in, I can do it easily. So the slide on this is a little bit easier to do. This gun turned out to be a little more temperamental. We had problems with the magazines on this. In fact, here is a magazine that exploded on me just while I was at the table. And what happens is the follower won't stay in the magazine. It pops up like that and jams the gun. So right now I think that the little LCP Max has some growing pains, has some work to do. If you're looking for something more reliable, the Security 9 or the Security 380 seems to be more reliable overall. There was a question in the comments about the slide racking on the Taurus. So this is the G3C, and of course it's unloaded. Now with this one, I can kind of almost do it with the two fingers. If I bring the third finger in, then I can do it reliably. This tends to stack at the back a little bit. I would say overall, though, the Security 380 is significantly lighter. If light slide is your thing, the Taurus isn't your choice. It's a good gun otherwise, but it's not really the light slide territory. The P365 380 recently came out, and when you look at that, you can see that it is noticeably smaller, has similar capacity. If I put them up side by side, you'll see the grips are shorter and the overall length, because I got them lined up at the back, is shorter, but the slide's not anywhere near as light. But again, the slide is going to be the difference. The P365 has a reasonable slide. I can almost do it with the two fingers if I bring that other finger in. So again, if you're looking for the lightest slide, this isn't it. But these are a good gun. We do have a review on this, and I like this gun. And then the last thing I'll show just from a size comparison is this is the P365 XL, and you'll find that they're close. The Ruger's shorter from a grip perspective by a noticeable amount, but the overall length front to back is quite similar. So the P3, of course, the P365 XL is a 9mm, but it wouldn't surprise me for SIG to actually come out with a 380 version of their entire SIG P365 line. That wouldn't surprise me. But there's just some quick comparisons to give you an idea where this fits in the size territory. It is a little bit bigger than my hand, but it's not huge. And prior options up until, again, just recently, where several manufacturers have come out with 380s in a lighter rack, the options were kind of limited to great big clunky guns with limited capacity. And it does have a 3-slot Picatinny rail. So it's got all the features you'd want at an MSRP of $369, which is actually very inexpensive for what appears to be a pretty high quality gun with pretty good capacity. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Getter, Rumble, and coming soon to Utreon. Thank you.
En esta parte de aquí adentro.